Hello, we are Team 1 and we're going to be covering Chapter 14, which is on prison life. Our team consists of Selena, Amber, Trista, and Miguel. The story of prison life leading to prison death. On October 12, 2017, footage of Adam Carvis being murdered by his cellmate was newly released. This incident is a visual representation of the unsafe conditions that inmates are submerged in when dealing with prison life. It unfolds the significance of staff doing their duty and how their role is essential in the prevention of prison life leading to prison death. If you click the link on the left, you will see more. This chapter is an overview displaying the reality of prison life, which includes prison lifestyles, prison subculture, sexuality in prison, prison violence, prison staff world, and the rights of prisoners. Those who understand life in prison the most are those who experience it. Hams Reiner, Department Chair of Sociology at Indiana University, tested this theory when he voluntarily served 3 months in prison as an incognito participant observer. His studies encourage knowledge of the social construct that is developed in prison life.
An inmate's world is divided into two societies, when first arriving to prison, both desiring some type of control within the prison walls, although this is not fully accomplished. The first society is the one desired by the prison staff, and the other unofficially being the inmate world. However, the inmate world is the most powerful and in control of society in prison. New inmates are then introduced to the reality of prison, where they must participate in prison subculture, or else they will be at risk of violence or even homicide if they are not abiding by the prison code. Prison code rules are: 1. Don't interfere with the interests of other inmates, never rat on a con. 2 is don't lose your head, play it cool and do your own time. Prison code 3 says do not exploit inmates, don't steal, don't break a word, and be right. 4, don't whine, be a man. And 5, don't be a sucker, don't trust the guard or staff. Prison culture, just as any other culture, has evolved over time, reflecting concerns within that society as well. Throughout the 1970s and the 1980s, the AIDS epidemic brought about changes to prisons to reduce the risks of spreading and also prompted changes to prison sexual behavior. Sexual behavior in prisons was encouraged from the subculture. Prison sexual behavior is mainly influenced by the naive young inmates who are first experiencing prison. Older inmates may offer them protection, food, etc., when in reality the older inmates consider this a loan of which they can ask them to pay off as sexual favors. Victims of prison rape and sexual assault are likely to be left with the psychological trauma, which can leave them in fear, paranoia, and even causes them to be self-destructive. Some men are even left vulnerable enough to question their masculinity, yet some may become violent and retaliate with violence and even kill their attacker. Female inmates are not as common as male convicts. While their numbers are rising, the female-to-male ratio is 1 to 14. According to Schmaliger, in 1981, women made up only 4% of the nation's overall prison population. However, this number has risen drastically. Today, the percentage of females incarcerated has almost tripled. According to the NIC, National Institute of Corrections, women face circumstances that tend to be specific to their gender. Women who have been victims of sexual abuse, assault, or domestic violence are responsible for children. Schmalager claims that female inmates have most likely experienced some type of sexual or physical abuse, substance abuse, or have had mental needs, their most common pathway to crime being a result.
The staff. The staff world in prison consists of doctors, guards, teachers, counselors, and even physical therapists. All have different duties, but all are obligated to assist prison inmates. Correctional officers are widely considered to be the bottom of the hierarchy of the prison staff. Their duties range from cell blocking guards to administrative offices, where they conduct clerical tasks. Women make up 20% of all the correctional officers, with the numbers increasing around 19% every year. The ACA have made it clear to correctional agencies that women are entitled to any position and are encouraged to apply. When rookie correctional officers are assigned to their first position, they soon come to the realization of the prison world. There is a common perception that all inmates are monsters, but that is not the case. In a study Lucien Lombardo interviewed correctional officers and discovered that rookie officers had to rethink their perception of the inmates and the staff. They quickly discovered that not all inmates were monsters like how society portrays them to be. Also, the relief of the professionalism of other colleagues changed when experiencing the prison world for the first time. The teachings conducted during the training for the correctional officers never translate well when working in a correctional facility. They often take sides with their colleagues against the prison inmates. Key facts: approximately 748,000 people are employed in corrections. 70% of correction officers are Caucasian. The inmate-to-staff ratio is around 4 to 1. Women account 20% of all correctional officers. Prison riots. Today's prisons in America are much more calmer than the past years. During the 70s, prison riots increased following improper treatment of inmates by prison facilities. A number of riots resulted in the killings of inmates and correctional officers. Even though prisons are calm today, riots still do occur. Researchers have conducted studies on the reasons for riots. Prison staff members neglecting the inmates' demands, violent prisoners organized with other violent prisoners, dehumanizing human conditions, cleanse the prison population, and power vacuums. Correctional officers still face dangers despite the decrease in the number of riots. Inmates have the capacity to extend their influence far beyond prison walls. Authorities believe that the two killings of 2 local district attorneys in 2013 may have been ordered by inmates with power, often called shot callers. Terry Paz, former warden, believes that the inmates have developed criminal enterprises, allowing them to operate behind prison walls.
Issues facing prisons today. AIDS. One of the leading causes of death among prison inmates. 2012 statistics show that a combined 20,093 inmates from state and federal prisons are infected with HIV, also known as human immunodeficiency virus, a virus that leads to AIDS. Rates of HIV and AIDS have continued to decline over the years due to HIV and AIDS drugs being administered to inmates. Drugs such as protease inhibitors and antiretroviral therapies are responsible for the decline in death of inmates due to AIDS. States that hold majority of inmates with HIV and AIDS include California, Florida, New York, and Texas, by accounting for 51% of all state prisoners with HIV and AIDS. HIV virus is contracted by inmates through homosexual activity, intravenous drug use, and shared needles. It is known that most inmates who are infected with HIV had contracted the disease prior to being incarcerated, while the rest obtained the disease while in prison. Prisoners with AIDS have been denied many opportunities and discriminated against as a result. Another issue facing prisons today is mental illness and intellectual disabilities. Inmates with mental illnesses and intellectual disabilities require specific needs. A vast majority of inmates have some type of mental illness. The Bureau of Justice Statistics noted in 2006 that prisons and jails contain 1.25 million inmates that present mental illnesses, with females being more mentally ill than males. There are 12 state-governed facilities in the U.S. that focus strictly on mental illnesses of inmates. Issues are a lack of medical treatment being provided to inmates who have mental illnesses and intellectual disabilities. Inmates with intellectual disabilities account for 10% of the prison population and are less likely to complete programs or become accustomed to prison life. Inmates with intellectual disabilities are also said to serve longer sentences. In addition, there are a lack of medical services provided to inmates with intellectual disabilities, and they are most likely to be placed alongside the rest of the prison population despite their special needs. Resolutions for issues in prison today. AIDS. Types of ways to reduce the transmission of AIDS. 1. Identify HIV-positive inmates and segregate them. 2. Inform inmates of the risk of contracting HIV and AIDS. 3. Provide adequate medical treatment to those who test positive for the virus. 4. Require HIV and AIDS tests for all inmates. Resolutions for mental illnesses and intellectual disabilities. Provide medical treatment to inmates in regards to the mental illness. ensure that inmates with mental illnesses receive the correct treatment for their illness. Therapy and counseling sessions by medical personnel who are trained in the mental health field. Transfer inmates who are severely mentally ill to mental institutions to receive proper psychiatric treatment. Psychiatric confinement. Increase the number of special programs equipped for inmates with intellectual disabilities.